Hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. Today we're starting out with chapter 23 of Leviticus, as we're going through Leviticus right now. And this is a series of chapter 23 where we're going to be talking about appointed festivals. So God is laying out here the appointed festivals that, or you might say holidays, but they're days really set aside, okay? And sometimes when we say holidays, you think of, oh, we don't have any school, we don't have to work, and stuff. But these are actually appointed days that are ordained by God and are used by God to glorify God. And so it's not just a free day of like, oh, I'm not going to do anything. A lot of these days, there was sacrifices and things you had to do. And all these festivals you're going to see point to the Lord, okay, and point to Jesus. The first one that we're going to deal with, which isn't like technically a festival, but it's the Sabbath, okay? And that's what we still celebrate today, of course. And so today is Saturday, but and so you might celebrate the Sabbath on Saturday. And but I celebrate the Sabbath on Sunday, and many people I know do on Sunday. So it's the big thing what I want you to see here, though, is this: that God never intended for this to be a legalistic thing, the Sabbath. Okay, so if it's Saturday, that's fine for you. If it's Sunday, it's fine for you. But when you start to get legalistic and demand that everyone has to have the Sabbath on your day that you chose, then that's where we get into problems, okay? So again, Jesus points it out in the New Testament that the Sabbath was free to enjoy, okay? Not a chore that you got to do, like, oh, it's a Sabbath, oh, I guess we can't do anything, No, it's a day to enjoy the presence of God. All right, so let's read here today. This is taken from Leviticus chapter 23, and I'm going to be reading verses 1 through 4, okay? It says this: The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, these are my appointed festivals, the appointed festivals of the Lord, which you are to proclaim as a sacred assemblies," okay? That meant not only might you come together, but it was proclaimed, okay? That this was a thing celebrated throughout the whole nation here. It wasn't just a certain area. The whole nation celebrated this day. Or it might be a week or whatever. Verse 3, there are 6 days when you work, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest, a day of sacred assembly. You are not to do any work wherever you live. It is the Sabbath to the Lord. Verse 4, these are the Lord's appointed festivals, the sacred assemblies you are to proclaim at their appointed times. Okay? Let's look back at verse 3, because the verse 3 really defines what I'm talking about here today. It says, there are 6 days when you work, but the seventh day is a day of Sabbath rest. Okay? This stuff is like, I've said this stuff before, okay? But there's 6 days that God gave you to work. On the seventh day is a day of rest. You will find, and it's been scientifically proven, if you just continue to work 7 days all the time, your body's not going to be able to take that, okay? And you need that rest. And God designed your bodies, and He designed the week. He designed the Sabbath for you to take that day off, okay? And for it to be a day of rest, okay? And it doesn't mean like you can't do anything, that I got to stay in bed all day, or I can't get out of my bedroom. No, it's not like that. But just don't be involved in the work. Let that stuff go. And it's like even a good practice, like for me, to not think about carpet cleaning that day. Like, I've got 6 days to think about that stuff and so forth. But that Sabbath day, let me just enjoy resting and being in the presence of God, okay? Now, there's going to come times that are exceptions, that, let's say, your ox falls into a hole. You've got to get the ox out. You're not going to just leave it in the hole and like, oh, sorry, I can't do anything, okay? It'd be the same for a tow truck driver. You call them up and like, hey, my car just broke down on the interstate when I was headed to church. And the tow truck driver could go, That's too bad because it's the Sabbath and I'm not driving my truck on the Sabbath. I don't want to break God's law, so you're stuck there. No, we can have exceptions to that, and God is a God of reason here. Okay, so it says, there are 7 days, the six days to work, and the seventh day is a day of rest. And it also says a day of sacred assembly. That's a time for you to get together with other believers. Okay, this was practiced in the Old Testament. Then it continued on through the New Testament. And when the church started, they met on one day of the week. It started out a meeting on Saturday, but then it went to Sunday because that was Resurrection Day. And so we changed the church meetings to Sunday because we celebrate Resurrection Day on Sunday. So it's a day to gather together. So again, there's times where you're like hiking out in the woods and you can't get to church. Well, that's okay. God's not going to strike you dead. But for the rest of the time, you should try and make it an effort to get to a church where you can fellowship with other believers. You can learn, you can spend time in worship to God. Okay, so those are the big things, that we're talking about here. It's a day of rest, okay, and then it's also a day where you don't do any work, but then also it's a day of sacred assembly. Okay, so, but I reiterate this point here. Don't make a legalistic thing out of it and slamming people over the head that you've got to do things the way that I do, okay? And be all legalistic about it. Jesus confronted that then in the New Testament, saying, Sabbath was not made for you to be all legalistic. And that's not an exact quote from Jesus, but it's my paraphrase. It's not to be made all legalistic. You're to enjoy the Sabbath, okay? So tomorrow is the Sabbath for me. Enjoy the Sabbath, okay? You can maybe go on a walk or whatever. It's fine. And fellowship with other believers at the local assembly, your church. All right? Thanks for watching. I'm a regular dude walking in the Word, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue our journey through Leviticus. Lord's blessing. I'll see you then. Hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking